So today we've got our Dodge D100 in the shop, came fresh from the junkyard right into here. We're going to get this thing roadworthy by first tackling the brakes and getting this thing to where we can stop it. Alright, so it's been about a week since we parked Rump here the last time, and I brought a trailer this round, so got the battery back in. Let's see if this thing will actually start back up. Drive him on out of here. So we've got Rump finally back home. It needs motor mounts down here on both sides. The harmonic balancer is actually stripped of 2 bolts, so it has 4 bolts in it, and the pulley does not want to stay straight. So I'm going to have to either tap it or replace it altogether to get 6 bolts in there, because it does like this motion right here. And need to replace the master cylinder, wheel cylinders, and maybe the drums and shoes. Probably will turn the drums, and if the shoes look good, I'll just keep those. The radiator is actually a reman or a new one, I think. It's brand new, basically. You can see the tag right there, but that's a new radiator. So that was really nice to have. Has a new water pump. So the fuel pump works too. It's new as well. Or I say new, it's not original. It's been replaced at least. The main thing is the brakes, the motor mounts, and fix the clutch, because that's what was giving me that serious wheel hop. And if you watch the video, I killed it a couple times, and that's why. Because the clutch is really chattery, and it just doesn't want to take off, and it's just really hard to drive. So I'll have to replace the clutch, maybe the pressure plate and flywheel. Don't know yet. I'll just have to pull it out and then see what's wrong with it, and do something with this shifter here. I've got plans right there. We'll talk about that in a later episode. But anyway, we're just going to try and get the thing to where it'll be roadworthy. Another thing, I don't know about this gas tank behind the seat. I'll have to actually take that out. I'm going to pull the seat out, and I've got another seat for it that I'll put in this thing that's actually nice. And we'll take the gas tank out and see if it's any count. It's not leaking anything, and that might be a good sign. So we'll see what happens. I've got this fuel tank back here that I'm going to rig up for the time being. It's probably like 6 or 7 gallons, I'd say. It's got a hose coming out of the bottom, so I can actually probably ratchet strap this thing to the bed, run my fuel line for the fuel pump all the way up to the engine, and we should be good. That'll at least get me by for the time being until I figure out something with the tank. I don't know if I'll have to put one under the bed, maybe like a fuel cell or something. Because on these trucks, on the early step sides, they actually fill in behind the cab. And don't quote me on this, but 72, I believe, either 72 or 73 was the last year for having a gas tank behind the cab. Now, you could do it later if you had a dual tank, but as far as this, that was it. And then later on, they actually filled in through the bed right here. You had a filler neck that would come out with a gas cap on it like this, and like a Little Red Express, you can see those. But I'll do some work to it. I want to get this thing roadworthy. The lights do actually come on besides the headlights because there's none in there. But the marker lights under the grill here, they came on. The turn signals work. One tail light came on, but the other one did not. But it still worked. So we're hopeful at least for that. We'll fix some wiring, put these headlights in here, see if they actually do anything, and then we'll go from there. It's honestly not that bad of a truck now that I look over it. It just needed some love because this thing has just sat and a lot of things are going wrong with it. So I constantly get the question, Dylan, what do you recommend as a first classic project that won't be expensive, that I can afford on a budget? And I got to thinking that this thing right here is a perfect example of that. So I'm going to treat this truck as if it were my first project. I had a very limited budget and I want to make this thing run and drive with as little money as possible. And we're going to make it cool along the way, do some personal touches that we can do for cheap. So this may not be necessarily what I would normally do as of today. There's some things that I would do differently, but I want to show you guys what you can do on a budget, and I'm not going to say that this will necessarily apply to your vehicle specifically. There may be some differences, so I don't want this to be an exact guide, but I want to show you what you could do on your own as a possibility. So we're going to start off with doing the brakes. We're going to pull off the shoes on all four wheels and see if we can salvage any of it. Maybe the shoes are okay, resurface the drums possibly. If that's possible, then we can save a lot of money that way. And maybe replace the wheel cylinders, brake lines, brake hoses, whatever we need to do. The master cylinder for sure. And we'll go from there, see if the thing will actually get a pedal and then stop, and then we'll go from that. But I just want you guys to be able to kind of relate to yourselves and think, well, if he can do this, then I can definitely do this, because all of this is going to be super budget. This truck isn't worth restoring because of how rough it is. It's really rusty, but I like the way that it looks and I want to be able to drive the thing. So we're going to do the basic minimum that's going to be safe, get this thing running and driving. So like I said, disclaimer, I'm not guaranteeing that this will work for you. You need to make sure that when you do this on your own, you do it properly, make sure that everything is safe, which I'm going to do as well. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. You ready, buddy? We'll work on the truck. Let's do it. So something that was interesting to me, at least, whenever I actually pulled the front wheel off the other side, was the fact that, if you saw in the first video, I was surprised that this thing had drums on the front. Now normally, from what I understand, after 72, disc brakes were standard. So whenever I pulled this off and saw a drum, I was very surprised by it, because I had never seen one of these trucks with drum brakes on the front. So I had a few comments saying that, why does this kid not know anything about drum brakes on the front of a vehicle that's old? But that's why. These trucks rarely came with any. It was an option for 72, and then after that, from what I understand, it was standard equipment for disc. So this is the first time that I've ever dealt with drum brakes on the front of a truck, of a Dodge D100 of this year, from 72 to 93, when they used this platform, or 72 to 80 for this specific body style. So this is new for me, and surely it'll apply the same as any kind of other drum brake situation will. So let's go ahead, pop this off, and we'll take a look at what we have. And just a little quick tip before you do this, always want to lay down a paper towel and make sure you keep up with all of your stuff. That way you don't lose it. So let's pop this dust cap off. This will look a little bit more crusty than the other side. I'll give it that. It's got a little bit of a green tint to it from the moss or whatever is growing on it. There we go. Plenty of grease in there. And one thing I like to do that you really should do, I recommend it, is never reuse your cotter pins, because I always like to replace them even if I'm the one who put the cotter pin in there and I take it back out. I still like to not reuse these because these things get brittle, they break, and like that one just did right there. So it's always good to replace these as you go. So let's take the cap off here, and then we will loosen up the spindle nut. back that off. Now I'm not going to pull the bearings out just yet because I ordered some, but I want to make sure that they're the right kind. That way, if they are the wrong kind, I can still at least reuse the old ones until I can buy new ones. So we're not going to take those out just yet until we verify that we have the right stuff. So at this point, just wiggle it back and forth. Break it, it's stuck to those shoes. We'll pull the outer bearing in the washer and see if we can actually pull this out. So what you didn't just see was me beat on this thing with the hammer, the screwdriver, and the pry bar for the past 20 minutes. So that's something you gotta realize if you're working on something this old that's been sitting for this long, especially with drum brakes. They're more than likely going to stick to the shoes with the drums. So let's go ahead and pull this off and see what we got. Alright, so it looks like there's still a lot of material left on our shoes. So I think that, yeah, that's going to be able to be reused. Now the wheel cylinder I do want to replace regardless, so we're going to do that. These seals are pretty much trashed, and I'll go through the steps of replacing those wheel cylinders. And yeah, here we go. We have a broken spring. Now it looks like the spring that holds these two right here is broken. So that's good. I'll have to order some new springs for that, just split in half. But that's no big deal, they're not expensive. And looks like our inner bearing stayed. So we'll just leave that there for the time being. That way we don't have to deal with it. And our seal's on there. And if I do end up using those again, I'll clean them up and then put all new grease on it. I'm going to do that regardless. So now that this one's done, I'm going to do that 3 more times. Not going to repeat it on video since you already got the idea, but we'll go from there. And for the rear, it's pretty simple. Really can't go wrong with it. Tuck this wheel up under the truck. Being that there's no spindle nut or anything like that on a truck like this, and rear end, you know, sometimes you'll get a heavy duty one that actually has the bolt-on hub and you got to take that off to get the drum off, but this one simply slides on, and maybe sometimes with a little bit of wiggle you can break it loose, and it looks like we're not going to be that lucky. So probably going to have the same story as the front side. I actually already took both sides of the passenger side already off. There's nothing hard about it. They slipped off easy. So we're just going to hit this thing with a hammer again. So we're going to try something here. A lot of the times when you have a drum stuck like this, take a good hammer and just walk around it. Hit it a few times. Now we'll try to wiggle it back and forth. There it is. This one looks pretty good too on the inside. And still got good material on the drum, on the shoes themselves. So I think we'll be good. Now this is not a plug. I am not sponsored by Rock Auto, but I really appreciate the service that they provide. So props to you guys. If you want to sponsor me, you know, get in touch. You know where to find me. So this is all of our hardware that we're going to use on our new drum brakes. So it includes wheel cylinders. I've got extra hardware for like the springs and everything just in case I broke something, which I've already done that. So pretty good idea for like $3. It was all new. And we've got inner and outer bearings and races. So we'll be pretty good. I'm excited about this. Let's go ahead and unbox all of this and I'll lay it all out. That way we don't have to go through the struggle of opening this on camera. Alright, so we've got some really nice stuff here. Here is our rear brake hose. We've got 2 front ones, inner and outer wheel bearings, including the races as well, and a grease seal. And here is our wheel cylinder for the rear, and then this one's for our front. master cylinder, which is really nice. It was a hard piece to find, but Rock Auto had it. And that's not a plug, I'm not gonna lie. Rock Auto was the only place I could find that had it. Then we have our hardware, and I've got another pack of this for the rear as well. But this will make sure if we break anything, it'll be fine, because these springs are delicate after years and years of being used. So for what, $3 or $5, it's definitely worth it to get a pack of these just in case. And that's gonna do it. Yeah, and normally now, like I mentioned before, you can do shoes and drums too, but being that both of ours are within spec and they'll be fine, I'm gonna go ahead and just use what we have. So what these new parts will do is replace this wheel cylinder right here and all these springs here. Actually, one already broke, so I'm gonna have to replace it, the one that connects the two in the middle. But it looks good. We've got all of our self-adjusting hardware. So what I want to do is I'm going to unhook this spring right here on this side and lay this shoe over after I unbolt this and unhook it from our brake hose here. That way the wheel cylinder will easily come out, and then we'll put the new one back in after we put our pins in. I'll show you guys what we're doing with that. But since this isn't a drum brake replacement video, I'm going to link a video by Chris Fix. He does a really good job explaining how all this works. So just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into detail of showing you every single step that I go through. But if you really want to learn how to rebuild drum brakes, Chris Fix does a really good job of explaining it. So I will link that in the top of the video right now. Alright, we took off our brake hose from the back. The two bolts that are holding the wheel cylinder are taken off. And I just undid this spring here. So that'll push this shoe out of the way. Let that hang. And we'll just try and wiggle our wheel cylinder out. There we go. So I've got the new wheel cylinder here. The old one is here. And you'll notice something different about them is I need to take the push rods for the wheel cylinder off of this one to be reused over here, because whenever you buy these new, they don't come with them. Now you can buy these, but I always just take and reuse the ones that I have. And it simply is just pulling, twisting it out. Just like that, you have two. And you'll notice that they're pretty rusty. What I like to do is take a wire wheel to them, clean them up, and then take a little bit of a WD-40 or anything you want and go on the inside here, right in the rubber seal, and then pop those in. Let me go clean these up and I'll show you how I do it. Alright, they're all clean. So, I'll take a little bit of WD-40 here, right on the inside there. Then we'll put this in. I like to twist it as I push. You hear that pop? Means you're good. Simple as that. We'll do the other side. That's it. Now this thing is ready to install. So what I have here is the inner bearing installed with the dust seal, and then we're going to take and pack the outer bearing, and the race is already in there as you can see. Then we'll put that in, washer, nut, dust cap, done. Something important to remember when you resurface your drums, if you end up doing that, you need to make sure that your max diameter is not exceeded. Usually on a drum it should stamp on there and tell you how much you can run these before you need to replace them. Make sure you check the max diameter. Just a little quick tip if you're resurfacing your drums. Okay, so I've got the master cylinder unbolted. Let's go ahead and pull this old one out, and then we'll start working on putting a new one in. Now this one, frozen. Doesn't move at all. Junk. Take this plate, and keep that. Like I showed you earlier, here's our nice pretty new one. So we'll need to get that push rod from the other one, but this will work. Alright, there it is installed. All I have left is to hook up those brake lines, and then we'll start the bleeding process. So we had a little bit of an incident here. That's brake fluid. And we actually busted a brake line right in this bend. They get really thin right there. So what I did was actually recreate it and make a new one. This is stainless, so it's not going to rust. Now I said that I want it to be pretty reasonable and easy to do. I did have to use my flare tool, and I had fittings and all. But you can actually buy this specific brake line for an 8 3/4 on the internet, already pre-bent, fittings and all. You can buy this, so it's not like you have to have everything to make this work. It was really simple, it's a few bends and the flare and you're done, but not everybody's going to have all that. So you could still go buy this from a parts store, get some generic brake line that's already flared, but it's just straight, and you can bend it to make it whatever you want. So that's not to say we might not have another brake line go out, but this is the only one that gave us issues. The other ones still hold pressure and everything, except for this one. So we're going to throw this on, and hopefully it works. Alright, so there's our new brake line installed. So now I began the process of bleeding the brakes. I've already done the back too. And since I'm by myself, here's how I'm doing it. I'll pump the pedal up till I start to feel pressure. Then I'll take this prop rod, stick it up against the steering wheel, and there you go. And you can use a block of wood, anything that would be the right length between the pedal and the steering wheel. That way it'll hold the pressure, and then whenever I crack the bleeder, all that air is going to go out. So on this truck, with the fuel tank being behind the seat, we actually have our hose coming out right here, which I disconnected from our metal fuel line that actually runs inside the frame rail here. So what I want to do is actually run a rubber hose out of here into my new fuel tank that I'm going to rig up for right now. But before I do that, I want to take and blow this line out with compressed air. I've disconnected the fuel pump up front. Look at all that nasty stuff that's coming out of this thing. Can't really focus on that, sorry, but you can really just see how that doesn't look like gas. So we're going to blow this line out, and hopefully a lot of the stuff will come out. I put a bottle on the other end, so let's see what we can get out of this thing. So rather than fight it on the truck, I actually just pulled the fuel line off. It was only 2 clips, so it was pretty simple. And I couldn't get anything to flow through it. I think it was the rubber hose on the end. So I've already cut that off. So let's go ahead and set the tripod up, and I'll see if I can get anything to come out of this thing. So unfortunately, our original fuel line is basically stopped up. I tried to blow it out with compressed air, and it would not blow any air through it. So this is trash. But what I've done is I actually went to O'Reilly's. You can probably get this at Advance or AutoZone or anything like that. And I went and bought this 5/16 fuel line. It comes with fittings. We're not going to use these in our particular application, but you could. Now, the reason I didn't buy like a roll is because, one, you'll need a special tool to flare it, and then you'll need fittings and everything if you need it. So what I did was kind of think of it as, I don't have any of those special tools or a big budget, which, I mean, fuel line isn't that expensive, but this was $8, and it was already flared on both ends with these fittings. It's not as long. This is 5 feet, while this one actually is probably about 8 inches longer, but we can make up for that. Now on the end here, if you notice, we have a straight line that comes off of the clip, which is right about here in this area, I think. And all this does is just runs along the inside edge of the frame rail, and then it goes through a hole. So what I'm going to do is actually bend our new fuel line to match this side, and then it'll probably cut short maybe right in this area for the new line, and we'll just run the hose through the frame rail and then join up to our new line. Normally, if I were doing this nowadays, I would actually go buy a new fuel line and bend it to fit, cut it, make it exact. But we're on a budget. This was $8, and it's going to work perfectly fine for what we need. Actually, I'm going to borrow this from Dad. He bought this for like 20 bucks at a swap meet. Told me I could use it. It's already been made provisions for a fuel line here, and we get a vent in the top. Alright, so here's the foundation for our gas tank here. What I've done is actually just taken 2 existing holes in the frame that crosses over right here, drilled through that wood, bolted it in, and then on each end, like right here and then over here, perfect. So there you can see where the fuel line goes up to the fuel pump, goes along the frame rail. Then there's where the hose connects to our tank. And there's our tank right there. Hose goes down, frame rail, fuel line, all the way to the front. Alright, now for the moment of truth. I put some gas in our tank back here. See if it'll run off of our tank. I had fuel in the bowls already, so that means that it's going to run off of what's in the carburetor. But I think we're working. Check for some leaks anywhere. I don't see any. Truck's in gear. It's running. Our gas tank works. The only thing that I need to do left after this is add a fuel filter. I do not have one, but that's like, what, $1 or $2, so that's not expensive at all. I just need to add one before I run this thing too long, just to be safe with that tank. And then we should be done with the fuel system. Everything works perfectly fine. Alright, so you saw the brakes worked. I wanted to show you guys and demonstrate while it was on the jack stands, because I don't want to take it off the jack stands just yet because the clutch is on the way. That clutch is so bad in this thing that you can barely even drive the thing. And I'm worried that if I drive it too much, then it eventually is going to quit working and I'm not going to be able to move the truck. So we're going to leave it on the jack stands, wait for the clutch to get here. That'll be the next episode on the Rusty Pumpkin here. But our brakes are fantastic. It's got a great pedal. It'll stop itself, as you saw. Had the brakes adjusted. I actually drove it before and the pedal went to the floor, but that was because all the drums weren't adjusted properly. But now they are, and the pedal feels great. So the next order of business, like I mentioned, is to get that clutch in. So left it up on jack stands. We're going to go ahead and start tearing it down. And hopefully for the next video, you guys will get to see me tear this thing apart, put a clutch in it. So like I said, this video series is really just something that I want to express that this is something you can do yourself. It doesn't have to be like a skilled expert. You can do this on your own, but you have to make sure you do it the safe way. Make sure that everything you're doing, you inspect, double check. Like I checked all those brake lines and I found that one that was rusted and I replaced it. So you always need to make sure that you're double checking your work and do the right thing. Don't just throw these wheel cylinders at it and expect it to work. You always need to double check yourself and make sure that everything's going to hold up. So with that being said, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment if you have any questions for me. Feel free to send me an email if you want to question me there. Order your t-shirts and your stickers, guys. Send in your projects to that email as well. So give me some feedback on the video if you like the series, what you think about it. If you think it's a good idea to kind of like give you guys some ideas as far as figuring out things on your own and doing your first project. So leave that in the comments down below. And once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.